The Real Assignment by Nyla. Of course, something like this would be happening to me of all people today. 1.42 million people in the city of San Diego, and I'm the one who has to go on a wild goose chase to try and find her most likely long gone psych professor. Your essays on socioeconomic status will be due next Monday, was the last thing I heard Professor Edmonds say before the whole city of San Diego was being told to evacuate for a quickly spreading wildfire coming our way. I packed my bags quicker than you could say socioeconomic and almost got out of Dodge before I realized I still had a paper due. If this wildfire passed and the firefighters got to it before it hit the downtown area, it would mean my essay is still due without a doubt. I had it done, thank God, but if I didn't turn it in, my whole grade would plummet, leaving me with no choice but to make the deadline. I tried emailing Professor Edmonds about the paper to see if class would still be canceled Monday, but he had never replied. I also tried contacting a few of my other classmates, but none of them could tell me anything useful. Edmonds had his address up on his class website in case any students had any questions or concerns over the weekends. I figured him being the old man he is, he still hasn't tried to evacuate to anywhere yet, and he was still somewhere around the house. I threw my two suitcases in the trunk and hit Harbor Drive. I knew 405 would only be overly packed with millions of people, panicking about where to go, so I stayed as far away from it as possible. Professor Edmonds lived on a roundabout, so if I could drop my paper off to him, then make my way to a hotel near Nevada, all within a day's time, it would all work out well. Trying my hardest to ignore all the drivers around me, I turned my music up full blast and made it through all the traffic. As I turned down his street, Professor Edmonds' car still sat in his driveway, seemingly untouched. Maybe he was home and getting ready to leave. I parked next to his car and knocked on his front door, my essay in hand. "Professor Edmonds, are you home?" I called out. No answer. I knocked a little harder and the door flew right open. The sight in front of me almost made me say forget the paper and the grade. Piles of papers were stacked in just about every corner I looked at. He had mentioned in class a few times that his wife had been dead for years now, so it was likely that maybe his home was a little messy, but this was just downright disgusting. Old pizza boxes were stacked ceiling high on the love seat. Pots and pans looked to have a month's worth of stuck-on food. Despite the pig pen I was walking into, the only thing that caught my attention was the television. He had left it on the news along with the coffee maker. It seems he didn't leave too long ago. I began looking around for some sort of clue as to where he could have left to. On the coffee table, his laptop lay open, Google Docs still on the screen. Come find. I knew typos and autocorrect clearly wasn't in his favor in this situation. Was he really in danger, or was this just the beginning to one of his short stories? The come fin part was the only thing that could be clearly made out. The typos at the end seemed to be as if he was being dragged away from his keyboard. The coffee maker and the TV still pointed to him being rushed out of the house. The fire was getting closer and closer to the city due to high winds, and I needed to get back on the road as quick as possible. I was worried about Professor Edmonds, but there was no clue where he could be or where he could have gone. Heading back towards the front door, I heard a low beeping sound that seemed to be coming from upstairs. I knew Edmonds was old, so it didn't come as a surprise to me when I found his little black life alert box on his bedroom floor. The small flashing red light had been flashing, and the chain connected to it had been broken off as if it was ripped from his neck. Panic set in as I picked it up. The life alert box, when pressed, was supposed to call 911, but no one had arrived from the looks of it. If they did and he was at the hospital, why would the chain be broken? It was decided. He was in danger, and it wouldn't be right to leave him. I had no clue where to begin looking, but I had the life alert box and a full tank of gas to help. Guards were outside on the road directing people which way to go. Nobody paid them any attention to see they were leading them towards a packed road. Luckily, I knew back roads that would take me to the nearest freeway that the news said was shut down due to reconstruction, but it looked perfectly fine to me and would take me on a direct route to Nevada. It would be so easy for me to just be going now and be at the safe hotel far away from the chaos, but my conscience told me I had to make sure all was well with Professor Edmonds. In a few of our lessons, he had mentioned how he was always at his favorite pub on the corner of 15th and Montserrat. I pulled over and walked in. A bunch of old men sat at the bar, sulking over tall glasses of flat beer. "Have you seen this man in here at all today?" I showed the man behind the counter the picture of Edmonds on the class website. "No, not today." He shook his head but didn't meet my eye. I repeated myself once again. "Have you seen this man come in today?" He put the glass he was drying down and turned to me. "Look, I said I didn't see him in here today. Are you going to nag me or buy a drink?" No wonder only the decrepit and depressed came in here. His attitude stunk. I started to walk away when one of the elderly men touched the fringe of my coat. His voice shook as he spoke. "I saw the man you're looking for." The bartender sneered and gave him a threatening look, but the old man ignored him. "Can you tell me more?" I spoke and sat at the stool next to him. He came in with some young fellow, looked to be about in his 20s. They said a few words to the bartender here and then left out. If we're supposed to be evacuating the city, why would he stop to converse with the bartender? Is that all you know about his whereabouts? I asked. Any more information as to who the guy he was with, and maybe I could figure it out and get going, but this old man seemed to be zoning out already. The boy had on some sort of blue lanyard. Believe it was a USCD one. But that's all I know, he answered. Okay, thank you very much, I say and walk out. Why would Professor Edmonds be with another student? Was it someone in my class? Maybe he was looking to turn in his socioeconomic paper like me and got to him before I could. But that doesn't explain why the signs of struggle at his house and why they had to speak to a bartender. I drove down the alley nearest to the bar when a silver Taurus that had been sitting still across the bar trails behind me. I couldn't make out the driver because of the heavily tinted windows, but whoever it was definitely had a reason for following me. I sped up a bit, getting ready to make a sharp turn to get as far away from them as possible. Their bright lights blared on once I started driving faster and they sped up to hit my trunk. My heart raced as my car jerked forward and I was thrown off balance. I made a quick right back onto the main road and nearly ran into oncoming traffic. The tourist couldn't possibly try to chase me when there was a constant stop and go on this road, which would give me time to lose him. The minute someone kindly let me over in front of them, the man in the tourist got out of the car and chased after mine. I could finally make out a face from my rearview mirror. He had a scruffy beard, as if he hadn't shaved in just a few days. A Yankees baseball cap fitted low on his forehead to hide his eyes would have been a dead giveaway. I spotted a baby blue USCD lanyard in his jacket pocket, so it was clear that he was someone from my college. What could he possibly want to do with me? He started sprinting towards me, leaving his car unattended. There was no way I could drive and speed away with the amount of traffic, and he would end up catching up to me. I threw my paper into my bag, threw that over my shoulder, and ran out of the car. He sped up when he saw me get out, so I ran faster, ducking behind honking cars. I didn't look behind me not once to see how far he was, but I knew he was nowhere near me. In the midst of running nonstop, I stopped and stood behind a fountain to take a breather. I heard footsteps from around the corner and just hoped they were anyone else except the man who was clearly out for my blood with no hint as to why he even would be. The footsteps stopped, and I made an attempt to duck around the back of a small flower shop, when just as I stood, a rough hand wrapped around my wrist, restricting my movement. "What are you—" Before I could finish speaking, he smacks a hand over my mouth and pushes me towards the back of the shop and takes his hand away from my mouth but keeps his grip on my wrist. "Who even are you?" I yell. Hopefully someone who happened to be riding by with their window down would hear me crying out for help and come to my rescue. That's not important right now. We need to hurry up and get going before time runs out. "What? What time?" I asked as he dragged me towards an empty car sitting in the lot with the keys still in the ignition. "I'll explain on the drive. Right now, I just need you to cooperate and come with me. Stop struggling." He tightened his grip on my wrist, and I could finally look up and see his eyes. They were green, or gray, and I finally recognized him as Isaac, the quiet but brooding boy who always sat in the far back of my psychology class. He was definitely 6 foot something, and I had never seen him move, let alone talk. He walked as if there was a stick up his butt. He never raised his hand in class nor asked questions, so I just always assumed he was pretty smart, and I never paid him much attention beyond that. The wind kept getting in his eyes, causing them to water. At any point in time, I could easily made a mad dash in the opposite direction while he was somewhat blinded. I chose not to because despite him chasing me halfway across town with no valid reason, he didn't seem to have a menacing look in his eyes. Isaac lightly shoved me into the passenger seat of the red pickup truck and closed the door behind me. He got in on the driver's side and sped off before I could think to put my seatbelt on. "Do you want to tell me what's going on now, or am I going to have to tuck and roll out of the truck?" I yelled. As long as I stood my ground, I didn't feel nervous around him. As a matter of fact, he was probably the one nervous around me. He never spoke to anyone in class, and no one ever spoke to him from what I've seen. He's most likely not even used to talking to people, and this was my advantage point. I could work the words right out of this wallflower. He kept his eyes fixed on the road. "I know just about everything you know, which is absolutely nothing." He snaps and makes a left onto another closed-off road. "Nothing is something, so therefore you do know something. Let's start off with why you're kidnapping me." I sit back in the seat and wait for his response. "It's not kidnapping if you aren't a kid. I was sent to collect you, and that's all I know." "Who sent you to collect me?" This was all coming full circle, or so I thought. "I don't think that's a question you need answered because you already have it." He looks over at me, his eyebrows furrowed. Nothing made sense now. Maybe Isaac was secretly best friends with some suddenly crazed ex of mine who sent him to murder me in cold blood. I find that highly unlikely, seeing as I haven't had a boyfriend since the 7th grade. "Okay, since I have no idea what you're talking about," he scoffs, "tell me why all people were sent to collect me. Who are you? I don't even associate with you." He makes a few more sharp turns, and we ride down a long gravel road. "I don't know. All I know is that I was supposed to find you and drive to some destination. I have no more information." It was evident that this guy was a total loony. He knew more than what he was letting on, holding back the most important information of it all. Who sent him? I'm positive I have no one that would want me dead. I haven't given anyone any reason to hate me to the point of wanting me dead. He pulls into some tool shop and doesn't get out of the car. Am I supposed to get out and do what? Buy a hammer to smash my head in? He laughs. A freaking loon. He sits still for a long time, looking around. My only worry now was getting out of the city on time, or at all, really. Wherever he had to take me, I'm sure it was still in the city. Are you going to tell me why we're still He shushes me. A scruffy old man brings out a small toolbox and a burlap sack to the car. Isaac rolls down the window to reach for it, whispers him something, and the man shakes his head and leaves. When he turns back around, he had a flushed look on his face as if he had just seen a ghost. What did he say? Is he who you're supposed to be bringing me to? He doesn't answer and pulls out of the lot. The rest of the drive is silent. Too silent. So silent to the point where I can hear my conscience practically screaming at me. I should have just said forget the essay and evacuated as soon as I was told, but of course I go and be nosy and walk right into a trap of some sort. We reach an old dusty home on the border of San Diego. The fires were so close to the point of seeing the helicopters dropping water over the forest in the distance. Let's go. He grabs the items and me by the wrist and knocks on the door. It looked to have already been burned previously. We wait on the creaky porch for a couple of minutes until the last person I expected to open the door opens the door. Professor Edmonds opens the door and steps to the side to let us through. This was obviously something beyond my understanding, so I played completely dumb. Wow, Professor, I've been looking all over town for you. I wanted to turn in my paper before I left, and Isaac cuts me off before I can finish. Can you shut up so we can see why the heck we're here? He's clearly frustrated. Professor Edmund speaks up. Ah, at last, the question of the century. Why are you here? Don't you ask yourselves the same question every day? I shift uneasily and Isaac sets the tools down on a metal stool. This question has puzzled me for years. Why am I here? Why is anyone here? Then I had an amazing idea. Turn this into an answer. This scenario that I have put you in won't answer that, but it surely will prove something else to me. I suppose I will never get the answer. Isaac and I give him a questioning look. He sits down on an old leather love seat. As you see, I want to see just how far you'll go. I picked you two because of your determination. The socioeconomic assignment was just a distraction. The next assignment is how far you'll go. Now that this fire is on the way, you won't have a chance to do the assignment. What are you saying? I asked. He was about to say something when Isaac sprinted toward the door. It was locked. Life or death. More importantly, another life for your death. What do you choose? What? Miss Cadlis, please open up the box. I lift the small toolbox up and see a small Smith & Wesson. Shoot him. I won't. I don't even know him. Exactly, Edmonds exclaims. At the end, we will all end up dying either way. But to choose whether or not you die for someone else's life is a thrill. Isaac was no longer the loon in the room. It was either I kill Isaac or Edmonds kills me, and I could see from the knife he was trying to keep hidden in his coat pocket. I hold up the gun, fingers trembling and sweating. I click the trigger and it jams. Professor Edmonds laughs. You've passed the test. What test? I asked. My heart was still stuck somewhere on the floor. You would kill someone else in order to save yourself. Unfortunately, that's the problem in this world today. Selfishness over selflessness. Isaac, you know what to do. The last thing I see is Isaac pointing a gun at me, and then everything goes black.